My name is Jake, and for 2 years, delivering pizzas was my way through community college. It was usually a monotonous cycle of hot cardboard smells and predictable suburban landscapes. But one rainy October night, that all changed. The order came in around 11:30 p.m., just as we were about to close. It was for a single large pepperoni pizza, cash payment, destined for an address on Blackwood Manor Lane, a part of town known for its sprawling, ancient Victorian homes that most people avoided after dark. The instructions on the ticket were oddly specific. Please knock firmly. Do not leave at the door. Must hand deliver to Mr. Abernathy. My manager shrugged, handing me the insulated bag. He just wanted to lock up, and I just wanted the $20 bill I imagined would come with a decent tip. The rain began to fall harder as I pulled out of the parking lot, the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers counting down to an encounter that would permanently curdle my sense of security and redefine the meaning of a late-night delivery call. The drive itself was an exercise in mounting tension. A classic horror movie opening I was now the unwilling star of.
Blackwood Manor Lane was less of a lane and more of a forgotten artery branching off the main road, quickly swallowed by a canopy of old, gnarled oak trees. The street lights, already sparse, gave up entirely after the first 100 yards, plunging my little sedan into a claustrophobic tunnel carved out by my headlights. The houses were set far back from the road, imposing silhouettes against a bruised purple sky, most of them dark and seemingly lifeless. The GPS declared I had arrived, pointing to a particularly Gothic-looking structure at the very end of the lane. A wrought iron fence, its points like rusted spears, surrounded the property. Unlike its neighbors, this house had a single, warm yellow light glowing from a downstairs window, a beacon that felt more like a lure than a welcome. I parked my car, the engines ticking, the only sound besides the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. I grabbed the pizza bag, the warmth of flimsy comfort against the chilling atmosphere, and pushed open the heavy gate. It groaned in protest, the sound echoing in the unnerving quiet as I walked up the cracked stone path to the massive oak door, my heart starting to pound a nervous rhythm against my ribs.
I knocked firmly, just as the instructions had specified, the sound swallowed by the sheer size at the door. After a long moment, a series of clicks echoed from within, and the door swung inward without a sound. An elderly man stood there, silhouetted against the dim interior light. He was impossibly thin and tall, dressed in a tweed jacket and waistcoat that looked like it was from another century. His white hair was immaculately combed, and a thin, precise smile was fixed on his face, though it never quite reached his cold, pale blue eyes. "Mr. Abernathy?" I asked, my voice sounding small. "Indeed," he replied, his voice a dry, papery rustle. "You've arrived right on time. Excellent." He took the pizza from me with hands that were surprisingly steady, their skin like translucent parchment.
He held out a crisp $50 bill. "I'm afraid I don't have anything smaller, my boy. Would you mind stepping inside for a moment while I fetch the correct change from my study? It would be quite impolite to leave you standing in this dreadful weather." His politeness was a thick veneer, perfectly applied but unable to hide the unnerving intensity in his stare as he waited for my answer. Against my better judgment and every instinct screaming at me to run, I mumbled a quiet, "Sure," and stepped over the threshold. The door clicked shut behind me with a heavy, final sound that sent a shiver down my spine. The air inside was cool and smelled of old books, lemon polish, and something else, something faintly metallic and unsettling. The foyer was vast, dominated by a looming grandfather clock whose pendulum swung with a ponderous, hypnotic rhythm. "Just this way," Mr. Abernathy said, gesturing down a long, dark hallway. As I followed, I couldn't help but notice the profound silence of the house, broken only by our footsteps on the polished hardwood and the relentless ticking of that clock. It felt as if no one had spoken a loud word in this house for decades. "I have a bit of a collection," he said, conversationally, his voice echoing slightly in the hall. "I find it fascinating to collect mementos. Each one tells a story of a journey, you see." I nodded dumbly, my eyes darting around, trying to pierce the shadows that clung to the corners of the cavernous home, my unease growing into a palpable knot of dread in my stomach.
He led me not to a study, but to a smaller room off the main hall. The only light came from a single green-shaded banker's lamp on a large mahogany desk, casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. My eyes adjusted, and I saw what he meant by collection. The walls were lined with meticulously organized glass display cases, the kind you'd see in a museum, but they didn't hold butterflies or antique coins. My blood ran cold as I focused on the contents. Each case contained a small assortment of personal items. In one, there was a worn leather wallet, a driver's license for a young man peeking out, next to a set of car keys and a faded baseball cap from a rival pizza place. Another held a cracked smartphone, a silver watch, and a single dirt-caked work boot. They were little shrines, curated displays of people's lives. I saw keychains, lanyards, and name tags from half a dozen different delivery companies in the area, a grim timeline of those who had come to this door before me. I felt the air leave my lungs, my mind struggling to process the horrifying implication of what I was seeing.
My gaze locked onto one specific display case near the bottom. Inside was a hat with the old logo of my company, one we hadn't used in over a year. Next to it was a name tag that read Kevin. I remembered the stories back at the shop. Kevin was a driver who had just vanished. Quit without notice, they said. Took his last delivery one night and never came back. His car was found abandoned on a back road a week later. Now I knew where he'd gone. Every piece has such a fascinating tale to tell, don't you think? Mr. Abernathy whispered, and I realized he was standing right behind me, his dry, papery breath on my neck. I was just thinking your company-issued jacket would make a wonderful centerpiece for a new display. The thin smile in his voice was gone, replaced by a chilling, predatory hunger that was ancient and utterly terrifying. He had no intention of giving me change. The pizza was just the bait, and I had walked right into the trap. Another specimen for his gruesome collection.
Primal fear, cold and sharp, cut through my paralysis. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just reacted. I spun around, shoving the old man with all my strength. He was surprisingly solid, but stumbled backward with a grunt of surprise, giving me the split second I needed. I bolted from the room, my feet slipping on the polished floor as I scrambled back down the dark hallway towards the front door. I could hear him behind me, no longer moving with elderly grace, but with a terrifying, scuttling speed, hissing my name in that dry, rustling voice. My fumbling, trembling hands finally found the deadbolt. The lock felt impossibly stiff, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought it was jammed. With a final, desperate twist, it gave way. I threw the door open and sprinted out into the cleansing, cold rain, not daring to look back until I was safely inside my car. I slammed the door, locked it, and jammed the key into the ignition. As my car roared to life, my headlights illuminated the front porch. Mr. Abernathy was standing there, perfectly still in the doorway, his face a mask of calm, patient disappointment, as if watching a prized butterfly escape from its jar. I sped away, leaving him and his house of silent stories behind, knowing I had almost become one of them.
My name was Maya, and I was 19, home from my first year of college. My dad was away on a business trip, leaving me in charge of my 8-year-old sister, Lily. It was a sweltering, sticky August night in rural Ohio, the kind where the air is so thick with humidity and the sound of cicadas that it feels like you're breathing water. We were watching a movie when Lily complained her stomach was rumbling louder than the T-Rex on screen. Cooking felt like a monumental effort in the heat, so I did what any responsible older sister would do. I ordered a pizza. The address was straightforward, but our farmhouse sat at the end of a long, single-lane gravel road, flanked on both sides by endless fields of corn that were well over 6 feet tall. It was a location that often made delivery drivers sigh when they saw it on their GPS. I placed the order online with a popular chain, paid with a credit card, and added a generous tip, hoping to make the journey worthwhile for whoever drew the short straw. The confirmation email said our large cheese and mushroom pizza would arrive in approximately 45 minutes. As the minutes ticked by, the sun bled out of the sky, leaving the world outside our windows a vast, inky blackness, punctuated only by the rustling of a million unseen stalks of corn.
The 45-minute mark came and went. At nearly an hour, headlights finally bounced their way down our long driveway. I saw the familiar illuminated sign of the pizza company on the roof of a beat-up sedan. Lily was practically bouncing with excitement, but I felt a small, unexplainable prickle of unease. It was just so late and so dark out here. I told Lily to stay on the couch and went to the front door, flipping on the porch light, which cast a weak, moth-filled glow onto the steps. The delivery guy who emerged from the car was not the usual friendly college kid or middle-aged guy I'd seen before. He was gaunt, with a sallow complexion and eyes that seemed too large and dark for his face. He moved with a strange, deliberate slowness, almost a shuffle, as he came up the porch steps. He didn't say a word, just held out the pizza box. I took it, the warmth of the cardboard a strange contrast to the cold look in his eyes. "Thanks," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Have a good night." He just stared at me, a blank, unnerving expression on his face, not moving to leave. "It's all paid for," I added, starting to close the door.
He put a hand on the door, stopping it. His touch was surprisingly firm, his fingers long and bony. "Quiet out here," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that barely carried over the incessant buzz of the cicadas. "Just you and the little one tonight?" My blood turned to ice. How did he know about Lily? He couldn't have seen her from the door. I gripped the edge of the door tighter, my knuckles turning white. "My dad's just in the back," I lied, my voice shaking slightly. The man's lips curled into a slow, unsettling smile that revealed stained, uneven teeth. It was a smile completely devoid of warmth or humor. "Is he now?" he whispered, his dark eyes flicking from my face to the dark cornfields behind him, then back again. In that moment, I knew this wasn't about a pizza delivery. I wasn't a customer. I was a destination. The isolation I had always found peaceful now felt like a cage, and this strange, slow-moving man was standing at the only exit, his unearning smile promising something terrible in the oppressive, humid darkness of the night.
I slammed the door with all my might, fumbling with the deadbolt and chain. I heard a soft chuckle from the other side, then the crunch of his footsteps on the gravel as he walked away. I scrambled to the living room window, peering through the blinds. He got back in his car, but he didn't turn it on. He just sat there, the car a dark lump in the driveway, its pizza sign now extinguished. A full minute passed, then another. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Maya, what's wrong?" Lily asked, her small voice cutting through my fear. "Nothing, honey," I whispered, not taking my eyes off the car. "Just lock the back door, now." As Lily ran to the kitchen, I saw it, a flicker of movement in the cornfield to the left of the driveway. It wasn't the wind. It was a shadow detaching itself from the rows of corn. Then another on the right side. They weren't moving quickly, just deliberately, stepping out from the cover of the corn into the dim moonlight, their forms indistinct and terrifyingly human. The delivery wasn't the threat, it was the signal. My breath hitched in my throat. There were at least 4 of them now, moving slowly, methodically, from the edges of the cornfield towards the house, their paths converging on the front porch where the delivery driver's car still sat, silent and waiting. They weren't running, they were stalking. Their slow, patient pace more terrifying than any frantic sprint. They were surrounding us. I grabbed Lily, pulling her away from the windows and into the central hallway, my mind racing. My phone. I needed my phone. I'd left it on the kitchen counter. "Stay here. Don't make a sound," I hissed at Lily before army crawling into the kitchen. I grabbed the phone, my trembling fingers barely able to unlock it. As I started to dial 911, I heard a sound that made my soul freeze. A soft, metallic scraping against the living room window glass. They were testing the house, looking for a way in. I knew we only had seconds. The 911 operator's voice was a lifeline, but I could barely form words, only managing to choke out our address and "someone's trying to get in."
Suddenly, the headlights of the delivery car flashed on, bathing the front yard and the figures in it in a stark, revealing light. For a moment, I saw them clearly. 3 men and a woman, all dressed in dark, ragged clothes, their faces pale and expressionless, like the driver's. They froze like startled animals caught in the beams. Then the car's engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel as it screeched in reverse down the driveway and disappeared onto the main road. The figures in the yard melted back into the cornfields as quickly as they had appeared, vanishing into the rustling darkness. We heard the sirens in the distance a few minutes later, a sound I had never been so grateful to hear. The police arrived and swept the area, but they found nothing but a cold pizza box sitting on our front porch. They couldn't explain it, calling it a prank or a robbery attempt gone wrong. But I knew better. It was a hunt, and we were the prey. We sold the farmhouse a month later. I can no longer stand the sound of cicadas or the sight of a tall cornfield at dusk. My name is Leo, and I was paying for my graphic design degree one greasy pizza box at a time. The worst part of the job wasn't the low pay or the terrible drivers. It was the sprawling, labyrinthine apartment complexes, the kind with identical-looking buildings and unit numbers that seemed to follow no logical sequence. On a particularly cold, foggy Tuesday night, I got a delivery for one such place. The Willows, Building G, Apartment 304. The notes were simple. Leave at door if no answer. The name on the order was just J. I found Building G after circling for 10 minutes, the fog so thick it muffled all sound and clung to everything in a damp, ghostly shroud. The building's main door was propped open, leading into a poorly lit, musty-smelling hallway. The air was heavy and still. I found the stairwell and trudged up to the 3rd floor. The hallway was a long, flickering fluorescent tube of dread, with doors on either side. I found 304 at the very end. It was dark, no light visible from under the door, and completely silent. I knocked, the sound echoing unnaturally in the corridor. Nothing. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing.
After waiting the full minute, I decided to follow the instructions. I placed the pizza on the doormat, took a picture for proof of delivery as per company policy, and turned to leave. As I did, the door to the apartment across the hall, 303, creaked open a few inches. An old woman with a cloud of white hair and milky, cataract-filled eyes peered out at me. The chain was still on her door. "You with the food?" she rasped, her voice like sandpaper. Yeah, for apartment 304, I said, gesturing to the pizza. She shook her head slowly, a strange, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Wrong door, Sonny. They're not in that one tonight. They're waiting for you down there." She pointed a bony finger to the very end of the hall, past my own location, to a plain, unmarked door that I hadn't even registered before. It had no number, no peephole, nothing. It was just a slab of dark, stained wood set into the wall. "They get hungry this time of night," she added, with a soft, unsettling cackle, before shutting her door with a quiet click, leaving me alone in the silent, humming hallway. A chill that had nothing to do with the fog outside crawled up my spine. This was weird, even for the Willows. Why would the order be for 304? If they were in an unmarked unit? And who was they? The order was for a single pizza. My job description didn't include solving mysteries, but the thought of leaving and getting a complaint from a customer was almost as bad as the creepy feeling this hallway was giving me. I sighed, picked up the pizza, and walked cautiously towards the unmarked door. There was no light coming from under it, and it was just as silent as 304. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the wood. This felt wrong on so many levels. I should have just left. I should have called my manager. But I was tired, and I wanted to go home, and this was my last delivery of the night. So, steeling myself, I knocked on the unmarked door. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. The force of my knock pushed it slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of darkness within. A strange, sweet, and cloying smell, like incense and something vaguely coppery, drifted out.
"Hello? Pizza delivery?" I called into the darkness, my voice wavering. No response. I pushed the door open a little wider and peeked inside. The apartment was almost completely bare, but the living room was illuminated by dozens of tall, white candles, their flames dancing and casting flickering, grotesque shadows on the walls. In the center of the room, 5 people stood in a circle, all dressed in simple, dark robes with the hoods pulled up, obscuring their faces. They were chanting, a low, monotonous hum that seemed to vibrate in my bones. They didn't seem to notice me at first. I was frozen in the doorway, my mind trying to make sense of the bizarre, ritualistic scene. This had to be some kind of joke, maybe some college kids playing a prank. But the smell was getting stronger, and the atmosphere in the room was heavy, charged with a seriousness that made the hair on my arms stand up. This wasn't a prank. As I stood there, clutching the pizza box like a shield, one of the figures looked up, their face hidden in the deep shadow of their hood. The chanting stopped. One by one, they all turned to look at me.
The silence that fell was more terrifying than the chanting had been. 5 pairs of unseen eyes were fixed on me from the darkness of their hoods. One of them, a tall figure who seemed to be the leader, took a step forward. "The offering has arrived," a deep, resonant voice declared from beneath the hood. "You are just in time." Offering? My heart stopped. They weren't waiting for a pizza. They were waiting for a person. The delivery was a trap, a summons. The name J on the order was not a name. It was probably just a random letter. They didn't care who showed up, as long as someone did. My mind finally caught up with the danger I was in. These people were not just strange, they were dangerously delusional, and I had just walked into the middle of their ceremony as the guest of honor. The tall figure began to walk towards me, arms outstretched, the other robed figures starting to spread out, blocking any path of escape through the apartment. I had to get out, now.
I didn't wait to see what they wanted to offer. I dropped the pizza, the box hitting the floor with a pathetic thud, and I ran. I slammed the door shut behind me and sprinted down the hallway, my footsteps echoing like gunshots. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear the unmarked door burst open and the sound of multiple sets of feet pounding the floor behind me. They were chasing me. I took the stairs 2 and 3 at a time, my lungs burning, my legs screaming in protest. I burst out of the stairwell on the first floor and ran down the wrong end of the hallway, hitting a dead end. Panic seized me as I heard them coming down the stairs. I ducked into another stairwell, this one leading down to the basement. The air grew cold and damp, the smell of mildew filling my nostrils. I stumbled through a dark concrete labyrinth of storage units and boiler rooms, the sounds of my pursuers echoing from the floor above, their voices a low, angry murmur. I found another set of stairs and scrambled up, emerging into a different hallway, completely disoriented but desperate. I finally saw the exit sign, a beautiful glowing green beacon of hope. I burst through the doors and out into the thick, cold fog, not stopping until I reached my car. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped my peas twice before I managed to unlock the door and throw myself inside. I tore out of the parking lot, not looking back, my tire screeching on the wet pavement. I called the police from a gas station several miles away, my voice a frantic, rambling mess as I tried to explain what had happened. The old woman, the unmarked door, the robed figures, the word offering. They sent a car to the Willows, but they called me back an hour later. They found nothing. The door to apartment 304 was locked, with no pizza on the mat. There was no unmarked door at the end of the hall. The old woman in 303 claimed she'd been asleep all night and hadn't spoken to anyone. They chalked it up to a prank or a bad trip. But I know what I saw. I never took another late-night delivery, and to this day, the smell of incense makes my stomach clench with a fear I can never fully shake.